Have you heard about this personal and professional podcast?
Coaching in Session with your host,
Michael Reardon.
Micah Blake, mindset and music. What got you into this work?
Well, I started learning music in high school, really, and got me through high school. It's not a unique story there. Music's gotten a lot of people through high school, but as I kept growing in music, I started doing in college and ended with a master's in music theory. Throughout that whole process, people kept coming to me. The questions were about music and how to learn it and this and that, but most of it throughout the years have started boiling down more to that mindset of music. Most people's blockages are about belief and mindset rather than actually how to do it. I mean, they still need to know how to do all the steps of music, but it's usually the mindset of it that holds most people back.
Is it the learning aspect of music or how music can affect personality and emotion?
So the book, Talented or Not, Here I Come, which just came out, is about learning music. So people have a belief often that they can't do what they want to do in music because of X, Y, and Z. And it works with going through that process and showing you how you can pretty much complete your goals personally for yourself through music.
You say is the most common roadblock that people face. I know when I was in music and I was going through it, people would say that they're too old to learn music. That was one of the common roadblocks that I faced when I was doing music still. Do you find that to be the most common one, or is there a new one that you see more readily today?
It's definitely a very common one. People view, I teach a lot of ukulele classes because it's getting more popular, but even though adult might be interested in it, they still have this viewpoint that kind of ukulele is for kids, but also that learning music is for kids, which is just a weird concept to me. It's something I've had to work through, understand why people think that. Probably one of the biggest things when they actually take the step and want to learn music, that is a big holdup, is their belief in this talent, that they aren't talented enough to do what they want to do. And that's been overwhelming message that I've been getting from a lot of people, thus the book, obviously.
I can see many people thinking that music is for kids because it's like dancing and it's fun. And we have that stigma of what being an adult is. It's like responsibilities and being strict and counting your calories and your macros. And there's not a lot of fun there. But then when we get some music in our life, it does something more for us and to us. Yet many people don't necessarily realize how powerful music is. You said like music saved you in high school, and you're right, it's definitely a common story, but how did it save you?
So going through the middle school years, then into high school, just had a really hard time with social, just everything about that time of life. And was really getting into art. So either all the arts, drawing, music, specifically piano at that time. And found that if I sat down and wanted to do some creativity and I wanted to get into a drawing and I was in a bad mood because of whatever, my art turned out horrible. It was tragic. And music, on the other hand, I could start getting into that. It would just pull me back into a place of peace, a place of groundedness, where a lot of things that you were having issues with kind of don't seem as big of an issue anymore. So I was working through those first few years of high school and I was super busy. Then the last year of high school, I didn't have as many classes. There wasn't a lot of electives that I really wanted, and I only needed a few to graduate. So I had a couple of extra periods where I could just work on my music. And having that time to put into creativity, and a creativity that also balances you out, really helped me out in that way. Later on in life, I found that music of all things has a really good balance of kind of your three aspects. Your body, you actually have to physically do it. Your mind, there's a lot that you have to think about, and it aligns things thinking wise very well. and then also obviously your soul. Getting all of those in balance in a music setting, just very powerful for anyone, but specifically at that period for me.
Many people, they have genres of music that they gravitate toward. It could be from their parents, just personal preference. They fell in love with it because of maybe they traveled somewhere and they just loved the culture, so they adapted that into their playing or their listening, maybe even. And you can go back to like childhood, like music then and then music now. Most people, they are going to have links to that music even if they're 80 years old. Alzheimer's, it doesn't matter, right? They, like a person in a nursing home, you play some Frank Sinatra and they're over there humming the tune, yet they can't remember their daughter's or their son's name. Or where we can look at how amazing that connection is. Do you find that many people associate genres of music with their upbringing and their current circumstances, or like their personal likes and preferences, or is it something that like anyone can change? For example, let's say I don't like country music right now. If I don't like country music, can I learn to love country music?
That whole concept's really interesting, and interestingly enough, my grandmother did have Alzheimer's, and you would start to whistle. You'd start to hear a single tune that she knew, and she would whistle it for the rest of the day. And she couldn't remember anything else, but that stuck with her. Along with that, I found working with older people learning music for the first time, it actually unlocks different things, their memory in multiple different ways. And I don't know the scientific reason for that, but I think that's something very interesting. As for genre change, personally, I grew up with like bluegrass, which is folk with a Celtic background, kind of. And I loved that. I loved the vocals of it. And so that got me somewhat into country. I really like punk rock. High school, I really enjoyed that. And then I had to teach music lessons to about 50 people a week for almost 5 years. So my teaching style, I don't go through a curriculum where they learn certain songs. We learn specific core principles that everyone in music pretty much has to learn. And then we base everything off of what they want to learn for songs. So I had to learn almost any genre and songs that I never heard of before. And the most interesting thing to me was some of those styles I had zero interest in. But the more I learned about it, and I had to learn how to play it to teach them how to play it, obviously, on some great appreciation for certain styles of music that I never would have before. So I think we'll find that genres that we enjoy, it's a lot of it is nostalgia. We liked it in the past, and so we still like it. And a lot of that comes down to not putting the time and effort into learning specifics and more things about other things. Some of them you're still not going to gravitate towards 100%. That's completely fine. But the more you learn about something, the more you'll probably find appreciation for that in different ways.
I do want to get into the music theory aspect of this because it gets into the mind, it gets into the learning aspect, it gets into everything. Because music today is very different than music of the old. Music today can easily be, just labeled a 1-4-5 chord progression pattern. And, like that's our pop music, our, your Taylor Swift, your Charlie Push, like all of these stars and things like that. Like people gravitate toward that maybe because the mind just necessarily likes that. But then we go back to that, folk rest, that country music. We can even go into some jazz or some blues. It's much more intricate, where many people, when they listen to that music, it's almost like they're put off. It's like, whoa, this is too busy for me. It's almost off-putting for them. Do you find that since we are living in this more simple progression of a mind, that our mind is not developing in a more fuller state than it would from maybe 2 or 3 generations ago, when they had music that was using multiple different scales and progressions? But today it seems like we're just fixated on what's simple and easy and what people generally like.
So as far as our mental progression based on that, I think I probably am not 100% the person to talk to. There's a lot of scientific things that would go into that. But as far as the way the music is going, there's a lot of reason that we've gone a lot more simple. A big part of it is the exposure to music. So we can listen to any recording that's professionally recorded at the touch of a button, where even when I was a kid, we didn't have that. Started getting like an MP3 player, I think, when I was probably a teenager, but like I didn't really do Spotify and probably until I was in college. And so even back then, we had to like buy a CD often when I was even younger than that. Before we had really good digital recording. So when my parents were growing up, or my grandparents were growing up, most of what you heard was live music. You heard musicians actually playing it, which means you didn't hear it the same way all the time. You mostly heard many mistakes in the music. Then it was mostly stuff that people knew. You didn't get a lot of variation in music unless you actually went and had more exposure to different people. Now you have it in all of our we're surrounded by music, mostly advertisements. Really, it's that simple. It's straight to the emotional point in the advertisements, which drives so much, which is I think where a lot of people get hooked on that. They start writing that, and it just snowballs into the majority of popular music sounds the same. Then if you really want to start digging into more, you get into people who are experimenting with stuff, and you can get into a whole new can of worms of completely different stuff, which would be considered wrong music back in the classical era, because they were much more mathematically creative, where if you did certain chord patterns, it would not be considered right, where there's not exactly right or wrong anymore that style. So it depends on which direction you're going, but the general music is people listen to what sells, so people write what sells.
Very true. When I was, learning instruments and like beginning to play, one of the reasons was because I wanted to get girls, and the second was because I wanted to like play some of this like music I heard in film. So like if I heard a song in a film, I would say, I would like to be able to play that, like the melody and just be able to like fiddle with that. And that was interesting to me, where I was treating it almost like how if you were to watch like a film in a different language, it's like you don't know what's really going on until you really immerse yourself into that language. And when I begun to learn music, it was like I got a guitar teacher. He was old soul. He had gray hair, but he dyed his hair gray, and so it was just funny. He was like a cool cat. He had this Guild guitar. It was a very nice guitar. I remember the first year I took lessons with him. I was probably like 8 weeks in. Just new beginner, just reading chord books and scales and all that stuff, and I was doing everything by myself. And then he gave me some great direction. Then didn't see him until the next semester because it was at a community college there. So it was like an add-on class, like in like a like an extra class. It wasn't like an accredited class. It was just extra learning. And I remember he came back like the next year, and I took him again. And this is after like maybe 9 months or whatever in between of me practicing and being part of the music club. And then I basically went in, and there was a lot of the same, there was a lot of the same students from the first class, but yet they didn't really make much progression. They just, knew how to do some of the things, but they didn't practice. They didn't have any diligence to learning, because the accountability was probably not there, because, they were older, and I'm sure they have responsibilities and things along those lines. But what's the difference between someone who wants to learn how to play and someone who really wants to learn how to play? Because, like for me, I could have been that adult that says, it'll be nice for me to learn this tune and for me to be able to play guitar for some girls and things like that. But it was something that was inside of me that said, hey, you need to learn how to play music. How do you tell or show people that if they have that desire, that talent, maybe if you want to use that word, that they should invest in, learning music?
Well, that's a multifaceted question, but essentially, process typically with going through people has about 5 steps, and I'll run through them real quick. So the first one always has to do with belief. You got to figure out what people have limiting beliefs so that we can get through them, or else we'll just hit a roadblock later on when those pop up. The next thing is goals. And this is where success or failure comes in. So people often kind of have that, am I talented enough to do this? And it really just depends on why you're doing it. What's your purpose? Where do you want to go? And a lot of people don't have any goals, so they're not going to get any real direction. Probably a lot of those people in your class, maybe they like kind of music, so they took it and they like the guy, so then maybe they'll take it again the next year. But they, if you don't know what you want or where you're going with it, you can just flounder any direction. Because I could learn specifically one style of piano and keep going deeper and deeper in that for the rest of my life. And if that's not where I want to go, then what was it worth? Next thing is learning. And that's kind of just comes down to you have to learn the things you need to get towards the goals that you want. Once again, you can learn, there's infinite things to learn, more so now than ever, music. And practice is, I think, where we're talking about right here. So practice is really interesting to me because usually when you talk to people and they say, oh yeah, I learned a little bit of piano when I was a kid. Well, I had to learn scales, and they roll their eyes and they talk. It's just a drudgery to them. And those people didn't learn music because they didn't enjoy music. That's what it comes down to. This is music. Most people aren't going to. I just saw 30 Seconds to Mars play. Amazing band, great performance. Most people aren't going to have that 10 minutes of fame, and they're a huge band, but still most people don't even know who they are. Even in the world of music, they're tiny. If you're shooting for something like that and that's your only goal, you're going to be practicing for years. You're going to put so much work into it just for this 10 minutes of fame. It's probably not worth it. And so that's why most people cop out, because they don't really have a good reason to do it. But if you enjoy music, or if you can find creativity and the joy of making music in little things that you do at home while you're practicing and weave that all together, and you get the benefits of music right away. It's not something that you have to put the pain in to get the gain. It's all the same. Then like little performances that I do different places, they're performances and they're fun and I enjoy them, but these are also kind of practice for bigger things I'm doing. There's always like a back and forth of, it's just a mindset of, am I doing this for myself for practice at home, or am I doing it for myself home because I love creating music for myself right now? So the people who can create that mindset of enjoying music while they're practicing and while they're doing it on their own often will go the farthest, because it's always in them and they're always getting that benefit from it. And then the people who just try to put in the work so that they can become good, they may have the willpower to do it, but typically those are the people that you're like, it's not really a spark there because they're doing it for all the wrong reasons, if that makes sense.
Very true. Think about like music in education with like, like the K to 12 type of schooling. And it seems like music or, arts in general are just always under attack. And, from our general life, like music is all around us, not like even talking about like nature. You turn on the TV, there's music playing on the commercial. You're watching a movie, there's cinematic stuff going on, right? You go to Disney World, there's music playing all around you. And I don't think people necessarily associate music with emotion. They just kind of understand it's there. They might hear it, but sometimes it just might be something that they are able to tune out of. So it's like they can go to sleep with music on because it's almost like that passive thing. It's like a passive note. And I don't think many people realize that, music has so many different layers and levels, not only from what you were talking about, how if, maybe you have a goal of learning how to play an instrument, but then, you know, you have to go through the whole like practicing part, and then you might have the limiting beliefs that you're not good enough, and you won't be better than certain band or artist, and you just maybe do it for this internal feeling of this makes me feel good, and it could be your own piece. Not everyone's going to want to be a superstar that's on stage playing for millions of people. Some people just want to be, able to play a tune in their home by themselves with no one listening. Maybe they have a dog or a cat. Maybe they can listen, but we don't necessarily evolve ourselves, it seems, past grade 12 with music, because it's like, okay, we had it. Well, even then, because in high school, you don't necessarily have to take music. You can take other uh, courses that are not music. I know for me, I didn't have to take music in my high school. You had to take 2 years of gym. You had to take art, like 2 years of art or 2 semesters of art. So you can take a regular art, painting art, things along those lines. I think there's some people even took like 3 gym classes. So like music, it seems like, people are always, giving a bad rap to. It's just like, what's the point of music? Yet music can be so powerful. It's like if you hear someone sing, like Aretha Franklin, Adele, like someone who has a powerful voice, and you can see the audience and they're just driven to tears. Emotion of music is so powerful, but yet the ambition to learn and to embrace music as a culture in the world and a society, it seems like, especially here in America, it's not promoted enough. But yet, if you go to another country, Europe, for example, in many Latin American countries, music is prominent, right? With the rhythmic drum patterns and maracas and things like that, the salsa, the Caribbean music, they're dancing. Yeah, and here, like Americans, when it comes to dancing, like I don't want to dance and stuff like that. But if you go to Puerto Rico or something, everyone's getting up and everyone's salsa dancing, and everyone's having a good time. Do you find that it's more of a cultural thing when it comes to music, or is it something that just society is just going down this path, like music is always going to take a back burner. It's never going to be as important as your math and your English and your writing, like the common core stuff. But what's your take on that? Because I'm sure people are coming to you wanting to learn music because they understand how powerful it can be in their life.
I think that especially in school systems, but Western mindset is all about grades. And music particularly, it's very difficult because you can grade maybe some music theory, which is pretty much not in, like, they don't teach much music theory. Even through my college, I was extremely happy with the course on music theory, and that was my major. It's just not well put together and we sheet music. But that's like putting everything about your life into grammar class. It's very, very small compared to what music is. So they'll have a really hard time with putting a grade point on music. And in some ways you shouldn't. The same thing with like creativity. People think that you're either creative or you're not. Creativity is just a skill and you can progress in it, just like rhythm, just like all of these different things. They're very, ear training, same thing. They're very, very hard to say it's right or wrong, or you got an A and you got a C. So that's why a lot of all the STEM subjects are getting exploded in the last few years, especially. And a lot of the arts are not, mostly because of that ability to grade it. So competitions and stuff, I'm not a huge competition person anyway, because I think you get a whole bunch of people excited. A couple of people might be happy with themselves, and the majority of the people feel bad in the end, just as a personal mindset and self-help and helping to become the best you. Typically, I don't think that competitions are great. And that's usually where music is actually set. You'll have talent competitions and stuff with music, and American Idol and all of that promotes a false placement of the very top 1%. And that's not where most of us are going to live. And also, the top 1% is not the top 1% of talent. It's the top 1% of looks and press and all of these millions of things you have to put together in order to become what everyone wants you to become. So, as for people's opinion on learning music, definitely has a backseat. People don't think you can really make a career out of it. A lot of it is ignorance of how to do that. I've had a lot of people in my life that have done it full time, and you're never going to see them on stage performing in front of thousands of people. But they have a way more fulfilling life than most of my other acquaintances who do jobs that they despise, because they can do what they enjoy doing. And that might be through teaching, that might be through playing for weddings. And all these things, you have to be a more rounded musician than you did 20, 30 years ago to accomplish it. You have to be a real person instead of just someone up there doing a job, because it comes kind of back to you can push a button and play a perfect recording of anything you want at your wedding for pretty much free. So if you want me to play a piece exactly as it's written, exactly like a professional would play it, there's almost no reason to anymore, because I can just press a button and have it be played perfectly. If someone wants to hire me as a musician, they want to hire me because they want me to play it. Well, I have to be able to give more than just what's written on some sheet music. I have to put a piece of myself into it, or else there's no reason for me to be there, really. That has more creativity into it in a lot of ways, but also has made some people kind of go the other direction and just say, well, why bother doing music? But there is kind of that divide. In a lot of ways, like I said, I think it's a good thing because it has taught people, kind of brings you back down to the basics of, yeah, this is actually about me creating something for you. It brings it back to that individualism instead of just, well, I'm a pianist who plays music, like to the world. It's gone back to personal me to you.
Do you find that creativity grows within a person who's learning music more so than a person who just aspires to say, I want to learn how to play music, because they most likely have that creative flair, that spark, if you want to call it that. But you can nurture it in different ways, from different teachers, different instructors, reading different types of books. That can give you different perspectives on things that you might have not thought about initially. And I know one of the things that many people, when they come from mindset coaching with me, it's like, oh, like I would have never thought of that, because we're going much more deeper than, just the surface level stuff. And, going back to my, initial question in the beginning, it's like the surface level stuff, the 1, 4, 5, like the simple stuff, like the, what people like. But then if you really get down to it, do people even know what they truly like? Because if you ask a random person who's going a 9 to 5 working for a Fortune 500 company, what would you rather be doing with your life? And they will probably say, I don't know. Or they might say something, like, I want to be on a yacht. Okay, then what do you want to do with your life after that? It's like, oh, I don't know. Like, like most people can't be creative beyond their current circumstance. So if they are in a 9 to 5 job, if they're in the rat race, or if they're in a stressful environment, they're not thinking about like a hopeful opportunity of learning a language, learning a music, finding passions. It's almost like they are absent mentally, and then we go back to the body, mind, and soul. That's definitely not a balance.
Yeah, I think that I'd say the majority of people that I run into have no idea what they want or how to get it. They just going to that next step. They're out of college. They want to find the job that is the dependable job. Finally are going out with someone for a while. So what's the next step? I guess we'll get married. I guess we'll have kids. I guess we'll get a house. Like, they don't care about any of that. They just know that's the next step. They should do this, should do that. Nothing wrong with a lot of those things, but most things are better if you're intentional. So when you get to creativity, like I said, a lot of people don't believe they can be creative at all. And even musicians, well, I just want to play the music that's there, and have to start with the most simple things in the world, like do finger exercise where we're just like strumming or just doing a few notes on the piano. And we do that for a minute. After a minute of doing something the same way, it can get boring. So I'm like, okay, I want you to change one part of this rhythm, any way at all, and just do it that way for a minute. Don't care what it is, and some people will start down that path and really blossom, and it will change kinds of parts of their life once they see that they can just create, that they can change things. Other people, it's really, really difficult and like almost an anxiety attack to change something themselves. And so that's a really interesting thing to work with people for. I'm sure you run into that all the time in your coaching. And what we'll find with people in creative things is once they start getting into it, changes them in all aspects of their life, because all of a sudden, I don't know if I want to go after that next job promotion, because I've seen the last 4 managers above me all get burned out and quit. Like everything in life says I should just keep working up that ladder, go to the next rung. And sometimes you need to kind of look around and see what actually works for you and how you can definitely get there. There's almost nothing in life that if we have a goal to go towards, you can't get close to that, or, depending on your speed and circumstances, probably surpass that and find you want something completely bigger than that.
Very true. When it comes to, music, it's definitely going to be a preference for many people, from their genres to the instrument that they want to learn how to play. But I have found being able to, learn an instrument is just so powerful, because it trains the brain in different ways. It's like going to the gym, right? You might work out biceps and triceps, but if you just keep working out biceps and triceps your whole life, you're going to have big arms and big triceps. But what about your leg? What about your chest? What about your back, right? There's just so many aspects to the body and the mind, and we have to be able to flex it, right? They say that there's two sides of the brain, right? So you have your mathematics side, and then I don't know if math and music are the same. I forget the like the whole hemispheres of the brain. I don't know if you know them.
So you're always, I know they're opposite, but so the math is the same as what your sheet music and music theory side would be on, but then music as a whole also has your creative side. So it actually kind of ties both sides together fairly well.
Yeah. Like you have to be able to like say, hey, I have this type of mind, and I'm like, all right, cool. If you are not being able to follow the whole mindset behind things, then you're just going to be falling into the whole aspect of what many people are trying to do with music, and that is to find some level of freedom. And at the end of the day, someone might just turn on some music to unwind, but then someone might want to play music to unwind. And I remember a story, and then I'm going to pass it to you to kind of wrap up. But it was a conducting class, and the instructor, he plays cello. So it was interesting, for me to go into that class, because I fell in love with the cello. I was like, whoa, this is like an amazing instrument. I was just like, I thought guitar was great and piano was okay. we had about 8 people in the class, and I think we were playing 4 seasons, and everyone had their own little part, and it was very easy music to play because it was just so simple, right? You just had to do a little bit, and then they did a little bit, and then all together you had that wonderful harmony, like the synergy. So we played the piece, and we were like, at the end of it, all of us just looked around and we're like, whoa, that was like amazing. It's not like we didn't hear the piece before, because we have heard the piece before, but when you have played it and you put your own emotion in it, it was just like astounding or amazing, was like would probably be the term. And I definitely want that for so many people to experience that feeling, because it's almost like a sense of being proud for yourself that you accomplished something. You learn a language, right? You speak with someone in that language. You're like, I was able to speak with that person. And before, my old me couldn't. And there's so many layers, beyond this, that I want people to know before, I pass it to you. Is like, yes, you can learn hola and like a couple of words, and you think like you don't know Spanish, but maybe that's all you need to know, right? Just learn the basics, the necessities. And from there, it's, you're able to build on that. And you're not able to build if you don't even have anything. So even if you start and you don't finish, understand that there's a lot of people who did not start before. Many people are afraid to start. They have that fear. And if you just use everything that I said and you just say, okay, not music, but life. Many people are afraid to begin. Many people are afraid to start. Many people are afraid to be passionate. Many people are afraid to put themselves out there, put themselves in the limelight and on stage. This is all, like a metaphor or an analogy that life is just so much more than what you're doing right now. So I always encourage people to try new things. So with that, I wanted to pass it to you. You can tell people how they can find you, what they're going to get from reaching out to you, and then some final words.
So I agree with that completely. There's like, I know a lot of people who will do like Duolingo. It's an app where you can learn different languages, and it's so hard for them to continue doing it. And usually that's because there's no purpose. They don't have a reason to learn that language. Whereas, language, it's communication. So if you can just find anyone who speaks that language and start working on your app and then talk to them a little bit, it will create so much more energy and so much more purpose for doing that. And if you can talk to someone who, say, like, I'm in the service industry, so I meet a lot of different people, and sometimes there's like a grandma who doesn't know English. And if you just say a couple of words to them in their own language, it means so much to them. And in that same way, when you speak to someone in music, it connects with them in a different way. That whole body, mind, and soul, you're touching different parts. And that's something that you can't learn in a book. You just have to do it. Whereas a lot of people feel like they can learn so much about it. I know a lot of people listen to podcasts and get in a learning loop. So they'll read books, they'll watch movies, they'll listen to podcasts, and they won't take the steps to go do it. So my advice to anyone who has an idea that they want to do something like this, like learn a language, learn an instrument, have a goal. I want to learn guitar song, and I want to do it at an open mic, and I'm going to give myself 6 months to do it, and then just go and do it. And that path is going to lead you somewhere where you probably have no idea yet where it's going to take you. And it might be that you finish it and you said, that was fun, and I'm going on to something else, or it may be something that you're just going to continue to enjoy doing. That's something that I think people need to always put at least some action towards, because if you're not doing action towards it, learning just ends up being entertainment. Once again, nothing wrong with that, but entertainment doesn't often enhance our lives. It's just something to pass the time and to not think about things we don't want to think about often. So I work with a lot of people in the phase of obviously belief and goals, but you kind of do that on your own a lot of times. Where I usually work with people is in specifically where they should learn music. So should they learn more sheet music? Should they learn rhythm? Should they learn different stuff? So you can find on my website, speakingmusic.online/assessment, a questionnaire where you can fill out kind of what you want to do in music. And me and my team will go over it and personalize, help you get on that path. So that's something that I think that people can get a lot of benefit from, because if you don't know where you're going, it's really hard to start.
Very good. And I'm definitely gonna put that link and then some website and some social links also, because I know people like to follow people first and then to kind of, see what they're up to. And so, like that's gonna be a great place for anyone to begin. So check out the description box below so you can check out what Micah is doing, be involved, to inquire about any questions. I know parents are so quick to get their children, music lessons and, like to make sure that they're music literate. But don't be afraid that if you're an adult, like music is not only for kids. Like if you want to learn music, learn music. So there's just so much more in life than, leaving everything up to kids. Like if I could fit those little tubes like the Chuck E. Cheese and stuff with my kid, I probably will go with him because he probably love it. But then at the end of the day, he's gonna be like, Dad, you're stuck. Dad, you're stuck. I'm gonna say, yeah, I am stuck. But you know what? This was a good moment. Our conversation was definitely a good moment also. So I do want to thank you, Micah, for coming on and talking about mindset and music with us and sharing some of your expertise.